What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the seventh album by rapper Scarface. Basically, this project is called The Fix, and it came out in the summer of 2002. The thing about this particular project is just the fact that Scarface was on the verge of retirement on this particular project. He started to become like the A&R. He became like the head of A&R of Def Jam South and stuff like that. And he was one of the ones that helped find Ludacris as far as that particular pitch kind of happened just within the early 2000s as far as that particular kind of went. But this was an album. Scarface had been around since the 80s with Ghetto Boys and stuff like that, but he had also been around with the solo career since like the early 90s as far as that pitch kind of particularly happened. But back in those days, back in the early 2000s, 20 something years ago, as far as that pitch kind of went, it wasn't quite as popular to be a rapper in like your past. It wasn't quite as popular to be a rapper in like your 30s or mid 30s forward as far as that particular pitch kind of happened. Scarface was getting close to being in his mid 30s, so this is kind of a pitch that this is originally going to be his retirement album. Now, after that, he did put out an album called My Balls and My Word in 2003, which was kind of a pseudo unofficial type album. I reviewed that back in 2020 as far as that pitch can happen with it, but it's been a while since I've reviewed Scarface, so I wanted to get to this one just because this is kind of a classic album here. Definitely has some heraldment about it. It's a pretty short album, but I still thoroughly enjoy it. Thing about this particular album is it's not that this particular album is kind of Texas fried and country fried as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. Definitely has some summer haze type tunes and just malaise of just stuff like that. It's pretty workaday also, I'd have to say. It's this particular concept. Doesn't have a ton of nightclub songs on here, and overall night outing type pitch apart from Guess Who's Back with Jay-Z and Beanie Sigel. I'd have to say that's about really the only nightclub song on here in particular. I'd have to say it's just a pretty dope concept to kind of get this particular album. Just the fact that it doesn't really have that many nightclub songs, but it's still a pretty good smash hit album. I'd have to say it's a pretty good concept. Now Scarface is typically like a gold selling rapper. He doesn't really go platinum with his albums, but it's not to say that that's a bad thing. It's just kind of the concept that for the most part he's a little bit more edge. Scarface is a little bit more edge towards hardcore rap as far as that particular pitch kind of has with it, but there's still some pretty great stuff here. Like I said, this is a classic album. I would definitely say it's going to get a pretty rave score. I'd say in particular there were three singles off this particular project, and a lot of these are pretty damn good times. So really, there's only two songs off this particular album I don't recommend. So we'll talk about that after we get to the singles. But yeah, some pretty great stuff here. This is just Scarface. This album might have been Scarface at his most commercial up to that point. It's too bad that he retired on a high point, kind of similar to Jay-Z with the Black Album in 2003. He kind of retired when he was getting like the highest charting singles that he had around that particular time. But Scarface definitely had some good bops on here, two of which were pretty good MTV and VH1 staples as far as that pitch, or at least MTV and BET staples as far as that pitch kind of went along with it. But the first single is Guess Who's Back, which has Beanie Sigel. And apparently it has Kanye West on there as well. Jay-Z, Beanie Sigel, and Kanye West. This really feels like a blueprint left over, I'd have to say, but it's not. This is still pretty good bop. This is like a sparkly kind of night outing gem, I'd have to say in particular. Good pizzazz for the song has some good pizzazz about it. This is just like an early 2000s companion to Lake Fair, I would have to say. This is just an early 2000s companion to Lake Fair, I'd have to say. And by that, I mean like nightclub outings and stuff like that. Just social pizzazz as far as that particularly kind of goes. And this just feels like a blueprint extra by Jay-Z. This definitely feels like more of a Jay-Z song more so than a Scarface song. But it's a pretty good pitch to get that in particular, I'd have to say. A good concept enough to kind of have that particular type stuff. Basically does feel like blueprint from 2001, just something that would have been left over. I like when they have like some of those leftover type songs that feel like that happened on a Webby album where it felt like a trill left over from Rick Ross's Trillo when Rick Ross was on that particular song. So it's just a good concept. Lil Wayne has done that. Like he's been on songs that felt like Carter 3 leftovers or something like that. Just pitches like that. It's a good concept. So I definitely like that one. Nice sparkly little single that works pretty damn well. It actually charted relatively high. Probably one of Scarface's biggest hits apart from Smile with Tupac on there, I'd have to say. On My Block is the second single, and this is like a churchy kind of civil hustlers, blue collar, everyday type song, I'd have to say in particular. This is a pretty straightforward and basic day commerce of a song, I'd have to say in particular. And this is a pretty bouncy song. So it kind of has, this particular song has a little bit of bounce about it. Definitely feels like some Sunday bounce and some stuff like that. Just a real kind of civil type tune just for Sunday afternoons and pitches like that. Not it's kind of churchy and gospel like, but it's also pretty straightforward and just workaday. Just kind of feels like a typical kind of day fare for like 2000 type fare as far as that particular pitch kind of happens. Definitely one of the more workaday type songs. This one's kind of like the opposite of Guess Who's Back. This one's a little bit more just like 4 o'clock p.m. Just got done with work or school or church or some of those type pitches, just some of those relative aspects. But it's just pretty steadfast and workaday as far as that particular concept kind of goes along with it. I'd have to say this is a basic kind of bop for day commerce and stuff like that as far as that pitch kind of goes. Really like this one. It's just a good bopper type one. It does have some dance bounce to it. Not, I mean, this could almost be like a club type song like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock p.m., just in a more steadfast and kind of civil type sense. It works pretty well. This is very composed for Scarface as far as that particular pitch kind of has with it, but it is a nice one. It's kind of an offhanded kind of outing type fare. It's just more day activity, but it can be like early evening activity, I would almost suppose within that sense. It's kind of got some bop about it, just in like a more composed sense. So it's a pretty nice one just for workaday type fare. And then Someday is a pretty nice one. This is produced by the Neptunes. This is a pretty good pitch. I think this has Kelly Price, or no, this has Faith Evans on there. That's a pretty good pitch to get that. Pretty good pitch to get that. It's like a gazing kind of listless day malaise of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a great summer dredge, I would have to say, in vanilla kind of rap. This is like a great summer dredge and vanilla relaxation type song, I'd have to say in particular. And this is just like a solid kind of warm weather ruminating of a song, I'd have to say in particular. So it's a pretty good concept. We get that one in particular. Just a real listless type song. Just relaxations off the meter on this particular one. This is just some great day haze and light picnic type music, I'd have to say in particular. Just some listless kind of summer, just activity stuff like that. Just works for that real just works great for that rumination and summer daydreaming as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens with it. Just a real nice one. This has a real lambent and kind of mellow production on here that just works great. This is a great Neptune speed, I'd have to say. Just, I mean, this one's not very engaging, but I would have to say it's just a listless type one that works extremely well. So despite the fact that it's more mellow and just kind of lazy, I still feel like it's a pretty good highlight. Just a great, it's late summer type weather for August, September. Definitely some of those type pitches. Definitely reminds me of some great August music, I'd have to say. Just a great song for that lazy kind of summer day with this listless skies, I'd have to suppose. So that's the basic promotion about this particular album. Now, out of 11 songs in this particular album, I wound up recommending to you 9. So that's kind of the concept. So the only 2 songs I don't recommend on here are just songs towards the end, which one of which is Sell Out and the other of which is I Ain't the One. Both of these kind of take it back to the My Homies days of Scarface, which is a pretty particular hit double album by him, but I just didn't really like the pitches of these particular ones. It also reminds me of The Untouchable for 97. It's kind of more typical kind of Texas Southern fare. Most of this album's kind of more malaise and just kind of work shift, kind of workaday type fare, just within the sense of just kind of summer gazing and stuff like that. But these 2 songs, Sell Out and I Ain't the One, are more typical kind of 90s Scarface, I'd suppose. Doesn't really fit the theme of the album. They're just not that compelling, I'd say. The productions just didn't really work that well. Just kind of some awkward ones that just didn't really have a good enough pitch. I mean, if you do like vintage Scarface, at least from 97, 98, some good pitches, but it just didn't work out for me as far as that kind of went. But let's talk about some of these highlights on here. One of the best songs on the album would be What Can I Do? I definitely enjoyed this one. Definitely enjoyed this one. It's like a haunting, kind of moody, late day dredge of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like some stellar kind of contemplation. It's Scarface with some grim views, I'd have to say in particular, and this has just got an emphatic glaze about it, I have to say. So this definitely has a great beat on here, just overall anguish type one that just works pretty well. Definitely goes well with Someday, definitely goes well with Keep Me, definitely goes well with Someday, definitely goes well with Heaven, some of those type ones, I'd have to say. Definitely goes well with In Between Us, some of those type pitches. There's some excellent type ones to kind of get on here. There's a lot of rumination on this particular album. It's a very purring and contemplative type album, I'd have to say in particular. Definitely like the concept of it. Scarface is pretty good at these rumination type songs. Tupac was pretty good at that, but Scarface gets even deeper, and he's pretty intricate with his lyrics also. So he has a good compactment just between like lyricism and then also making it marketed towards radio airplay as far as that pitch could go. So these are some good ones. Keep Me Down's a pretty highlighted one. It's like a crisp kind of summer haze and drear. Keep Me Down's like some crisp kind of summer haze and drear, I'd have to say. It's like a relative steadfast kind of hustler's work shift of a song, I'd have to say in particular. And this is just like a typical kind. This song is just like a typical kind of day grab some food type song, I'd have to say in particular. So this song is just like a typical kind of day grab some food type song, I'd have to say in particular. Just get some snackage, go through the drive-through, some pitches like that. Just get some good grub and some of those type pitches, I'd have to say. Just some real kind of typical kind of day activity work shift as far as that pitch can happen. Just some errand activity stuff like that. Just relative steadfast kind of day as far as that pitch can goes. Definitely like some of these as well. Scarface has a lot of good makeshift songs on this particular album. Some blue collar type stuff. At least some hustlers, blue collar type stuff that works pretty well. In particular, I'd have to say this is just a good example. Another song that's just like Keep Me Down would be Safe. Definitely appreciated this one. It's like a grizzly kind of summer haze pep of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a typical kind of afternoon pep that the song particularly kind of has. And this is just like a get some swishers and potato chips type song. This is definitely like a get some swishers and potato chips type song, I'd have to say in particular. And this is just good for some day activity, errands fun, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty good concept to get that one. Once again, pretty good companion with Keep Me Down. This is the same type of summer glaze and just pitches like that. This works great for like a hot July kind of day, something like that. That relative type pitch of just errands running, stuff like that. Just typical kind of out and about, just day fare and commerce. So that to say, it's not really like a club song. Same thing with Keep Me Down, both of which are not really like club songs just within that pitch, but they're just kind of day activities. Get some gas, get your oil change, some pitches like that. Just standard day activity, just as far as that pitch kind of goes. Get some potato chips, Swisher, some of those type pitches. Maybe even pick up like a fifth of Jim Beam, something like that. Just typical kind of day activity. But Good stuff. Heaven is a pretty nice one. This is like a glimmering kind of day malaise of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a workaday kind of blue collar ruminating. I would definitely feel like, and this is just good thoughts. The song has good thoughts and lyricism from Scarface on it in particular. And this is just like a basic task to do and kind of outing song, I'd have to say. This is another one that's just kind of some day activity. This one goes pretty well with On My Block, some of those type pitches, just that grizzled kind of day malaise, just that after effect, it just workaday type feels as far as that fare kind of goes. Where I feel like Keep Me Down and Safe are a little bit more recreational. I feel like songs like Heaven, On My Block, and a little bit of In Cold Blood are just. I feel like songs like Heaven, On My Block, and In Between Us are just kind of more grizzled day malaise, just for like that worship type fare, just within a relative sense. Pretty steadfast type ones, but they work just within a relative sense of just kind of typical kind of workaday type fare, just out and about, just standard commerce as far as that particular kind of goes. Speaking of In Between Us, this is a pretty nice one. This has Nas on there. It's pretty good effect. It's like a ghostly kind of dredge late day haze of a song, I'd have to say, for fallouts with homies. I'd have to say in particular. It's a good concept for like a homies type song. Definitely reminds me of Tupac's songwriting, some pitches like that. This is pretty good too. And I'd have to say this is Workaday, but it's dreary, and the song is Workaday but dreary, I'd have to say, and it has character, I would have to suppose in particular. So it's a dope enough concept to get this particular one. So it's a real ghostly type one. Just really has some of that dredge about it. This works pretty well. Just some good kind of day afterthought malaise just for some ruminating as far as that pitch kind of goes. Definitely a good ton of these just to particularly kind of have. This is just kind of a more winded and taken aback type album, I'd have to say in particular. If you're looking for more snap and just overall in your face type songs, really the only song that's like that is just Guess Who's Back, I'd have to suppose. But for the most part, most of this is pretty contemplative album, I'd have to say. It's just kind of the concept. But I would have to say at least some other in your face type songs, at least within an Aaron's type sense, would be Keep Me Down and Safe. But for the most part, most of this is just kind of day malaise type contemplation, I suppose, just workaday type stuff. But Nas does a great job on this particular song, In Between Us, and so does Scarface. They just do a great job, and so does the chick on the hook. I'd have to say Tanya Hera, and I'd have to say something like that. Pretty good pitch. And then In Cold Blood's a pretty nice one. This is like a thumping kind of in between type cut, I'd have to say in particular. It's like some solid hangout music, I would definitely have to say. And this is just like a flip on the PlayStation, get some pizza, residential type tune, I'd have to say, and smoke one. Some pitches like that. This residential type fare, just smoking throughout the neighborhood, going by a gas station, picking up some snackage, just things like that. Just residential type fare, just kind of out and about, but just kind of in a more local type sense, I'd have to say. It's a basic kind of bop. This really just feels like some good hangout and homey type music, I'd have to say in particular. Just a basic kind of bopish type one, just kind of have for some solid hangout type fare, just solid evening and stuff like that. Just after hours, day after hours, just got done with work, kicking it with the buds and stuff like that. Definitely kind of PlayStation type music, those type pitches. I mean, when you listen to the lyrics, Scarface is not really talking so much about hangout type fare and homies type fare, but I'd have to say in particular, it's just kind of the concept that it just works. This the production, the lackadaisical and kind of taken aback production just leads me to believe it's more hangout type music. It's a pretty good concept. I would have to say it's a good song to listen to. Definitely smoke a few too, stuff like that, I'd have to say. So yeah, I'm gonna give this album like a 10 out of 10. Like I was saying before, there's only two songs I didn't recommend on here, which were just some poor type ones, just in terms of production type fare and overall engagement. But other than that, I'd have to say it's a 10 out of 10. The social score is going to get, that's kind of tricky. I think I'll give the social score like an 8.5 out of 10, because this does have some gems on here. I think there's a lot of rumination. I think the three singles, I think it's kind of offhanded to suppose which homies are going to like the churchy kind of gospel like song of My Block, I would have to say. But I would have to say Guess Who's Back is a pretty nice bopish type one to kind of get for some nightclub type fare and stepping out, I'd have to say. Really, I think I might actually give the social score of this particular album like a 5 out of 10. I just kind of feel like it's really not that popular in terms of like social type fare. I feel like apart from Guess Who's Back and maybe On My Block in certain kind of cases, I'd have to say most of this album is not really that particularly popular in terms of social type fare. This is a lot more insular and just kind of more ruminating type fare. I feel like maybe In Between Us with Nas could be pulled off as like a decent song for like your homies as far as that pitch can goes, but there's just not a ton of songs. I'd say Safe and Keep Me Down are some other type ones that kind of have some relative social pep about them, but it's just kind of offhanded as to how popular they'd be, just because they're more standard album cuts that don't really have much chart appeal, just because it's not common that Scarface charts in the first place. That has so it's really kind of here and there. So I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10 social. Now, don't think the social score of this particular album negates the fact. Now, don't think the social score of this album negates the fact that this is a fun album and a kick-ass album, because it definitely is. It's just a lot more insular. It just kind of has more bops on here, but they're just not quite as casual casual and they're just not quite as casual and engaging, I'd have to say in particular. But that's the basic concept about it. So in terms of the future, like Scarface retired again after Emeritus in 2008, but then he put out an album in 2015 called Deeply Rooted. And then I want to say in like 2017 he dropped like a redux of Deeply Rooted with some bonus songs on there and pitches like that. But for the most part, he's kind of full blown retired. I'd have to say just within that particular pitch. I'm definitely going to get to some more Scarface down the road. I got him planned for the future as far as that particularly going to goes. We're going to get to some more. We're going to get to some more Scarface this summer as far as that pitch kind of particularly happens. But this is definitely a classic album, at least in the relative sense, and not in terms of the casual sense for like your buddies and stuff like that, or your buddies or stuff like that, or ladies type fare. But I'd have to say in particular, it's a pretty classic album just in terms of the impact and being a Southern album, just overall having that appeal. The rumination and character and songwriting is off the scale in this particular album. Some tons of good hits to kind of have on here. It's just kind of the concept. It's just more for like it's just kind of more for standard and workaday type fare, but I do recommend it quite a bit.